Mr. Graff, I can understand your passion, and I don't mind having these conversations with you because, God forbid, if it was my child, I'd be demanding answers too. Those kids walked out of those homes. No one pulled them out. No one forced them. What do you see that I don't?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Here's the Thing, and we are here to tell you about Weapons, the new release movie from Zack Kger, the horror thriller coming out this weekend. We're not going to spoil anything about this movie. If you know anything about Zack Kger, you know he has some twists and turns in some of his movies. We're not going to spoil any of that here, but we are going to tell you what we thought about it generally and what we're excited to see in the future of Kger's career, how it compares to Barbarian, and just overall, were we scared by this horror movie? I'm not by myself, thankfully. It'd be hard to talk about a horror movie by yourself. Might be a little bit too scary, but thankfully, I am not alone. I'm here with Ari. Welcome back, Ari. Here's the Thing. How are you feeling going into Weapons? And are you excited to talk about it?
Yeah, I was really looking forward to this one just based off the concept alone. The concept is there's a lot of things you can do with it. I'm really excited to talk about spoiler free as much as we can how
We'll
they
try.
how they did with that concept.
It should be a fun conversation for sure. And yeah, Barbarian was a huge breakout hit in 2022. I remember going into that with very little expectations or knowledge of what it was going to be. I'm not sure I'd even seen a trailer. I might have seen like one teaser or something like that for it. And I had a similar experience with this where I didn't watch any of the trailers. I saw the very first teaser where they give you just the very bare bones premise of what the movie is. But other than that, I didn't see any of the marketing. So I was excited to go into this one blind.
Yeah.
And for me, it definitely lived up to the expectations and honestly surpassed them. I was really, really impressed by this movie. It took a second for me to really latch on to it. I think the first half or so started to feel a little traditional. I started to kind of like lose me a little bit. And then once it starts to turn a little and starts to like unravel into something a little bit different, I was really, really hooked into what this movie was doing. It's going to divide people, I think, especially when it takes a lot of tonal shifts and goes between like comedic and horrific. And sometimes you're not quite sure how you're supposed to feel about a scene. Even in one moment, it'll be cutting from something scary to something funny, and it really throws you for a loop. This one for sure. But I really loved the ride of this movie. I really had a great time with the performances and overall just the unpredictable nature of it. You never really knew how you're going to go from one scene to the next. And it's one of those movies where from the first scene to the last scene, you never would have thought you would get where you end up going, and I just really, really loved that ride. How did you feel overall about this movie, Ari?
Yeah. Before I give my thoughts, I just want to comment a little on the trailers. I saw at least one of the trailers past the teaser, and without spoiling the movie, I will say they did give away. I mean, yeah, they did give away a good deal. There's a great shot that it's a very shocking thing to see right in front of you, and they straight up showed that in the trailer. A lot of people have been talking about one shot in particular. Thankfully, I wasn't like over the moon looking forward to this, so I wasn't that bummed. But yeah, it would have been nice to go in more blind. And Barbarian, I really, really loved Barbarian. Not everything worked for me. I didn't love everything, like how it ends and everything, but overall, I thought the direction was really incredible. I was like, this guy really knows how to shoot like horror, and he does a good job with shocking imagery. Where a lot of the time in these sort of studio horror movies, I'm not always in love with the way it's not always that clever, but he did a pretty good job with it. I think what's so great about Barbarian is he just builds that tension. Like there's like a whole like 20-minute sequence in that movie where I'm like I don't like I am legitimately terrified. And I did like this movie. I liked it quite a bit. I can't say I loved it as much as I maybe loved Barbarian. And I will say it was not on the level of Barbarian in terms of actually being terrifying. It was scary. So there were moments that were scary, but it wasn't like Barbarian was like I have not seen a studio horror movie that's scary in quite a while. But I really like it. I think the best part of this movie is probably the performances. And I mean, we can certainly get into that. I think Josh Brolin for me is the standout here. I think this is without question his best performance since the Avengers movies. Can't really think of
Hmm.
anything else where he blew me away since then. And I'm really more. I forgot that he's going to be in Knives Out 3, and so I'm. That'll be interesting to do that double feature because he is really incredible in this. Um, Julia Garner, she is great. She is great. I will say that I feel like she wasn't maybe given as much to chew on as him, but I thought she was really great. Um,
There's
and
a lot of great casting here. I'll mention as well Benedict Wong, who plays like the principal of
he
the
was very
school.
good. Yeah, he was
Really good
very good.
role. Alden Ehrenreich, also from Disney's fame, he's Han Solo himself, shows up as a cop in this, and I really liked his character because he's one of those characters where you don't really know how you're supposed to feel morally about some of the stuff he's doing. He's not straight up evil or anything like that, but he's doing something where you say, "Oh, I wouldn't necessarily want you to have done
They
that in that
they
moment." It's a complex character.
they portrayed that in such a weird way. When it happens, it was so weird because I know what he's doing is wrong, but I didn't hate him for some reason. Like they portray it in a weird way where you're not supposed to. You're not supposed to. It feels like you're not supposed to hate him.
Yeah, I really enjoy the time we spent with these characters. I will say that the movie makes like a structural choice where you're not necessarily spending a lot of time with some of the characters all the time, and I think that for me left a lot to be desired with some of the characters, especially Julia Gardner's character, the teacher who is the teacher in this school who all of her classmates or all of her students go missing. I would have really liked to see more of that character and her initial reaction and like how that
Yeah,
changed over time. And I really didn't feel like we got much of her character. You get an understanding of like, oh, she's an alcoholic. She's kind of relapsed into drinking again after this experience. But other than that, you don't really get more. Her performance doesn't necessarily like evolve that much over the
yeah.
course of the movie. I really would have liked to see more of that character, especially because to me that character should be like the central point of the story, but you don't really get to see much of it.
Yeah, she should be the central point, and everything else is built around her. And maybe people's perception. One thing I would have liked to see more is how does everyone feel about her? Like you only get an opinion about her from Josh Brolin's character. You don't really, and I mean that's not really much for the trailers did hint at that his character is very angered with her, and I wish they would have gone into all the other characters, and I mean not all of them, but the ones central to the story and how they felt about her. Like how does like Benedict Wong, like how does his character really feel about her? And you just sort of you don't exactly get that.
Yeah, I definitely think we could have benefited from maybe just like a trimming down of some of the characters to focus on a core few, but I wouldn't really want to lose a lot of what's here. So it is a good cast, but I would have benefited from I think focusing on just maybe
Yeah.
two or three characters rather than kind of this
Yeah.
expansive whole town approach to the story.
And I've seen comparisons to Magnolia in terms of the narrative choice, but honestly, I was thinking of Magnolia in the whole Austin Abrams from Walking Dead and Euphoria. He has a segment in the film that I really enjoyed, and to me, that felt like something from a Paul Thomas Anderson movie, like this really goofy, just entertaining, like doofus of a character, and you're just I to me that felt like something from a PTA movie, and I really enjoyed that part of the movie. That's the tonal shift that worked for me personally. The main tonal shift that we obviously won't discuss in detail, that one did not completely work for me because it just felt like it just collided with the tone the movie was going for, and I don't think that mixed very well. But this one worked for me, and I think part of that is Austin Abrams is a really good actor, probably an underrated actor. I'm really looking forward to seeing him, and he's going to lead him and rumored Mikey Madison are going to lead the Zack Kger's next film, his Resident Evil film. And I'm curious what he does there. I've been a fan of him ever since I saw him in the Walking Dead and Euphoria, and I'm glad he just got a moment to shine here in a big studio film. And so, yeah, I really enjoyed him in the film.
I definitely am excited to see what Zack Kger does next, because I know he's signed on for Resident Evil, and I got a very like visceral kind of video game energy from this. And I was watching it, I was thinking, oh, we should do like Grand Theft Auto or something like that. You know, it has that kind of street level, high energy violence to it at points. And when you mentioned Resident Evil afterwards, I was like, oh, that's perfect. You know, it feels like something that would be right up his alley. I'm really excited to see what he does next.
Yeah,
And I
and
think he
those
directed this really, really well. Like, there's these really, really intense moments that are very like action oriented, where you're like following a police car through the street and stuff like that, and you get almost like a POV shot for a second. And then there's also
yeah.
these moments of like almost laugh out loud comedy. Like the whole audience tonight at points was like genuinely clapping and cheering and levels of laughing, and it was such a wild ride to go on. And I think Kreger is great at balancing those tones for me, and I think the way he holds it all together is just really impressive. And something like that big tonal shift that we mentioned that we can't talk about, but also the one you did mention, all these characters kind of have their own vibe and their own reaction to this event, and they express that in their own style and their own tones. And I really loved that approach to it, where all of these characters react differently, and because of that, their scenes feel different. Some of them are scary, some of them are funny, and I think that makes sense to what this movie's going for.
Did you think the cinematography, did that make you think of Magnolia or PTA? The way it's following one character and then
You definitely can see that he has that kind of loose energy, inherent vice kind of thing going for it, and I think it has that, almost unreal energy as well. Like some of PTA's movies, they have that like slightly elevated, larger than life feel to the characters, and this movie has that to an extent. So I really like the
what
feel of it too.
what did you think of Austin Abrams in the film?
I thought he was really good, and that's a character that I think when you're selling somebody who is sort of like this burnout drug addict type, it can be someone who's really, really unlikable and gets on your nerves very, very quickly. But they clearly took notes from like Jay and Silent Bob and stuff like that, and made him this really fun character to spend time with. Even though you're
Yeah.
watching him do really, really despicable things, you can't help but like kind of like this guy. You know, it's a really great character, probably the best character for me in this movie, which I did not expect to think.
Yeah, he might be for me I think Josh Brolin is what I'm most connected to in the film. And it's cool to see him work with like an up and coming filmmaker, like not someone who's established. And I mean, I know that he said in an interview that like he purposely, yeah, he was very hesitant to work with, not but like he likes that security. Like if a Villeneuve or like a PTA, someone like that, if they have a flop, you're covered because that's a big name. But with this guy, if this movie failed, like you would not be. And he even said that the premiere for this was the most lively, interactive premiere he's been at since Avengers Endgame. And the reaction to this made him think of Endgame. Just everyone was so positive and so reactive to it. And so, yeah, I'm really glad he did this because I think his performance is really great. Maybe not, I wouldn't maybe not go so far as Oscar worthy, but in terms of like a film like this, he really really did a great job.
I'm really curious because I think it was that role that Pedro Pascal was originally going to be in.
Yeah, it is.
And
Yeah,
I don't know if that was confirmed 100%, but I think that would have been
he
interesting. It's a
confirmed
much
he
different
confirmed
take.
it. Yeah, and if the strikes never happened, we would not have gotten Josh Brolin and Julia Garner.
It would have been a much different movie, I think.
I think so. I would have been. I will say, like, I'm glad it was Josh Brolin, but I would have been really interested to see that kind of performance from Pedro, especially the same summer as Eddington. That would have been really interesting. But I'm glad we got what we got.
Do you have any final thoughts you want to say about Weapons? What you made you think about your feelings coming out of it before we end this?
I think overall it's a really good horror movie, and I really like a lot of the directing and that creative decision. I do think in the overall I did really like it. Maybe I'll feel differently on rewatch. I think it's a film that will benefit from rewatch, but yeah, I mean, yeah, overall I think it's really well directed. I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does next. I think he is one of the best people in the horror space right now. So yeah, I would definitely would recommend Weapons, especially if you like Barbarian.
Yeah, I think Kger is proving himself here. I like this much more than Barbarian. I think it's a much more confident movie, and it takes some bigger and bolder swings than I think Barbarian does. And I think he's proving himself to be a very fascinating voice in the horror space, where we're seeing this transition from like these highbrow elevated horrors that are like post Hereditary movies. And there's a lot of Hereditary like in this movie at points, but it also feels like a transition away from those movies into these kind of very insane, heavy genre type of movies. And the way this swings between like a Hereditary and a Substance level movie back and forth at some points, it was really unexpected. And I can't wait to see what this guy does next. Yeah, I really had a great time. And in terms of recommendations, because I do like to end these with recommendations of things that are somewhat similar, I want to recommend the Nick Cage movie Mom and Dad. It has this similar kind of like dysfunctional small town thing where you're seeing Nick Cage and his wife in that movie. I can't remember the actresses now, where they get infected with something and end up becoming these very vicious and intense, possessed beings that are attacking their kids. A very fun, not really like this in a lot of ways, but a similar kind of visceral small town horror movie. I also want to recommend Freaky Tales. I think that came out last year. It's a anthology movie with actor like Pedro Pascal is in that, I believe, and it's similar to this, where it's following different people who are experiencing paranormal events of different styles and tones around a small town. So it is a very cool movie. That also goes through those different switches where you're like seeing one movie in one scene and one movie kind of in the next almost.
I believe that was Selma Blair.
Selma Blair. You're right. It was Selma Blair. Definitely recommend that for fans of Nick Cage, Selma Blair. I also want to recommend The Leftovers on HBO Max. That's the first thing I thought of when I watched this, honestly, in the way that this is about how all these people respond to the unexplainable events of these kids walking away in different ways. Some people turn to drugs, some people turn to violence, some people turn to alcohol, some people turn to just pretending it didn't happen and moving on as much as they can, pretending like everything is normal. And they explore all those to an extent in this movie. But The Leftovers, I think, because the TV show has the time to really go into all those reactions to a similar event where 2% of the population just vanishes inexplicably. So those are my recommendations: The Leftovers, Freaky Tales, and Mom and Dad. Ari, did you have anything you wanted to recommend, or like similar movies or shows that you thought of while watching this?
The first thing I thought of was Leftovers, which I have not seen, but I really want to. But I think you got a pretty good list.
Yeah, we also had a release this week. If you guys didn't recognize, if you guys had too much of the horror and the gore and you want to go to Disneyland and watch something fun, Michael's on the other side of the void here, reviewing Freaky Friday as we speak. So you can check out the channel at Here's the Thing. We probably have that review up for Freaky Friday right now. Also, we're probably going to do a spoiler review of this movie, Weapons, because as you may have noticed, there's a lot we want to talk about that we couldn't get into in terms of plot twists and tonal shifts and that kind of stuff. It would be a very fun time to sit down with Ari and Michael and I and maybe anybody else who saw this movie wants to discuss it sometime over the weekend. We also have a film festival going on in Chicago with a bunch of 70 millimeter films that me and Ari are going to be reviewing a handful of them over the next few weeks. So it's going to be a pretty busy week or a month here at Here's the Thing. So watch this review, go check out Freaky Friday, but we got plenty coming more for you. Anything else you want to say, Ari?
No, I think we covered it.
Yep, that's it. So we told you what the thing is. If you liked it, hit subscribe, hit like. If you didn't like it, bye.